Just as a reminder, the Secretary General is traveling to Ghana this evening, where he will attend the memorial service for the late former Secretary General Kofi Annan, which takes place on Thursday in the Guinean capital. As the Secretary General said at the wreath-laying ceremony for the former Secretary General, Kofi Annan was a man who embodied the United Nations values and made us all proud to call ourselves his colleagues. He was a true voice for the voiceless who did not shy away from the most challenging issues, but worked creatively to bridge differences and protect the most vulnerable. The Deputy Secretary General will be heading off to Washington, D.C. to engage in discussions with senior management of the International Monetary Fund on financing for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. She will also participate in open dialogue at the IMF with the Managing Director, Christine Lagarde, and she will be back in New York later this evening. The UN mission in Afghanistan has condemned the series of bombings that took place today in Nangarhar province, which killed at least 21 civilians and injured 60 other people. The mission also voiced its mounting concern at the pattern of attacks targeting civilians in schools. The majority of civilian casualties occurred in the Mohandra district of Nangarhar, when a suicide attacker detonated his explosives among the crowd, demonstrating against a local Afghan police commander. That area and its capital, Jalalabad, have recently witnessed multiple attacks by anti-government elements, specifically targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure, in particularly schools. Within a 15-minute period this morning, no fewer than 3 schools were targeted in the Bishu district of Nangarhar and in Jalalabad. The Secretary General's Special Representative, Tadamichi Yamamoto, said he feels profound indignation at this latest wave of attacks deliberately targeting civilians, stressed that the bombing of schools and the killings of children are among the most egregious and repulsive acts of terrorism which violate international humanitarian law. Panos Moutsis, the regional coordinator for the Syria crisis, said today he's deeply worried about the recent escalation of hostilities in northwest Syria, resulting in the new displacement during the past few days of over 30,000 women, children, and men, and scores of civilian deaths. Currently, there are some 6.2 million internally displaced people inside Syria. He said that our fears as humanitarians is that the worst may be ahead of us. The safety and protection of some 2.9 million civilians residing in Idlib and surrounding areas is at risk. This includes some 1.4 million internally displaced persons, the majority of whom are women and children who came to the region from other areas. A further escalation of military operations in Idlib and surrounding areas will not only endanger civilian lives in this densely populated area, but will also severely impact humanitarian partners' ability to deliver life-saving assistance, he warned. The Council is meeting on Idlib right now, and the Council is scheduled to discuss Yemen this afternoon. The Special Representative Secretary General in Iraq, Jan Kubish, visited Suleimania and Erbil. He met with leaders of political parties, and in Erbil he met with Kurdistan Democratic Party President Masoud Barzani and met separately with the Kurdistan Region Prime Minister Nirshirvan Barzani. The Special Representative urged political leaders and forces of both the federal and Kurdistan region to unite and work together for a speedy establishment of a pro-reform, non-sectarian, patriotic national government with partnership participation of all components and segments of Iraq in full respect for and implementation of the Iraqi constitution. He warned that the destabilizing impact of any procrastination that will only exacerbate the dangerous divisions and polarization across the country. And on Friday, the Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, Mark Lowcock, will be in Oslo. This will be his first visit to Norway in his role. He's scheduled to meet with the Foreign Minister, Ine Eriksen Søreide, and he will also sign a multi-year agreement between Norway and the UN Central Emergency Response Fund, and he will deliver remarks on the occasion of Norway's new humanitarian strategy. And for the 3rd year in a row, there's now been a rise in world hunger. That's according to a new UN report on the state of food security and nutrition in the world. The report is a joint project of the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, the UN Children's Fund, the World Food Programme, and the World Health Organization. These agencies report that 821 million people, the vast majority in Africa and Asia, faced chronic food deprivation in 2017, compared to 804 million in 2016. Nearly 151 million children aged under 5 were stunted due to malnutrition, compared to 165 million in 2012. In addition to conflict in many parts of the world, the gains made in ending hunger and malnutrition are being eroded by climate variability and exposure to more complex, frequent, and intense climate extremes. The agency warns that there is considerable work to be done to make sure we leave no one behind on the road towards achieving the SDG goals on food security and improved nutrition. The report urges increased intervention to guarantee access to nutritious foods and break the intergenerational cycle of malnutrition. 12:30 p.m. there will be a briefing here on the commemoration of the UN Day for that's tomorrow at 12:30. There'll be a briefing here on the UN Day for South-South Cooperation, which is September 12th, and that will be done with the Director of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, Jorge Chediek, and other guests. And today we say thank you to Sudan for paying its dues in full, bringing us up to easy peasy for you. You should maybe go on Jeopardy. Go ahead. And paying attention. Being here yesterday doesn't always imply that you are actually paying attention.
I was paying attention.
But you are, yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. As you know, John Bolton, who was formerly a U.S. ambassador to the UN, now National Security Advisor, sharply criticized the International Criminal Court, called it illegitimate, said the U.S. would not cooperate, etc. But during the course of his remarks, he said that the Trump administration regards the U.S. Constitution as the supreme law governing the United States, not making any exceptions for the UN Charter, etc. So I'd like to know your comment on behalf of the Secretary General to that remark.
I'm not going to get into an analysis of the speech given by the National Security Advisor. The Secretary General's own position on a lot of the issues he raised are clear and unchanged.
Well, just more generally, how does the Secretary General view the position of the UN Charter vis-a-vis the Constitution of any particular sovereign state, including the United States?
The Secretary General deeply values the relationship he has with the United States, founding member and major contributor and main contributor to the United Nations, and he stands in his role as defender of the UN Charter. Yes, Masood.
Thank you. Thank you, Stéphane. One thing, can you confirm whether the Secretary General will be visiting India in the second week of October? Is that?
I'm not in a position to confirm. When we have an official travel to announce,
is that visit on?
As I've just said, I'm not in a position to confirm it. When we have official travel to announce, we shall.
My question would be, if he is visiting India, will he be talking to the Indian Prime Minister about the human rights violation reported by his High Commissioner recently?
Well, it's hard for me to answer that question when I'm not able to confirm the actual trip. Signorina.
Thank you, Stéphane. I was wondering if the SG has any comments on the announcement from UN High Commissioner Bachelet that she would send investigators to Italy to check the reports about racism and violence against migrants, and if the SG is planning to raise the issue with the Prime Minister Conte if and when they meet during Anga.
You know, the High Commissioner gave a very detailed inaugural speech to the Human Rights Council, talking on a number of issues, and I think all the measures that she announced and plans she said she was going to implement are within her mandate. Yes, sir.
Thank you. As a follow-up to Mr. Klein's question, there is a threat here to international law. I mean, and there is news circulating that the SG stood with the ICC. I haven't heard from you that the SG issued any statement in support.
You may not, I don't know if you were here yesterday, But if you looked at the transcript, I think I gave a very strong answer on the Secretary General's position on the International Criminal Court, which is his position today, and it was yesterday and the day before, and it's been his position for some time, which he believes that the International Criminal Court, which is independent from the Secretary General, has a very important role to play in the international justice system, including on the issues of accountability.
No.
That's his consistent position.
Thank you. And regarding the closure of the PLO office in Washington, is there any position of the SG?
No, I have no particular comment at this point on that.
Another question. Israeli court threatened to abolish that village of Al-Khan al-Ahmar. And there is now, as we speak, there are some confrontation. It might escalate. And there is warning that might be a number of deaths in the next few hours or a few days. Is there any position of any UN
as
official?
always, we would appeal for calm, and I think this issue of the village is one we'd spoken to before and answered. Yes.
Thank you, Stéphane. On Saturday, Iran launched 6 ballistic missiles targeting a group of Iranian political asylees in the city of Koya in Iraq and killing more than a dozen of them, including children. This is the first attack of such a scale from Iran to a target inside Iraq since the 8-year-old war between Iraq and Iran. Does the SG has any comment
I think
about
it's
this?
very important as a matter of principle that all countries respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Iraq.
And any updates from your offices in Iraq about the attack?
No, I have not that I have received.
Sorry, my second question. Is the Secretary General plan to talk with our Prime Minister Conte?
I don't have the list of bilaterals as of yet. As soon as I have it, I will.
All right.
Yep.
Can you give us an idea about the in Idlib right now?
Well, what the UN has, what the UN has been doing, UN and it's important to stress, its partners, its humanitarian partners, its on the ground, is delivering aid to where it can through cross-border deliveries from Turkey and pre-positioning aid in as much as possible in areas around Idlib. But as far as I know, we don't have any, UN has no physical personnel in Idlib itself. Okay. Masood?
Thank you, sir. So, Farhan, Stéphane, do you have any opinion on Iran?
People often confuse us.
I'm sorry.
People often confuse Farhan and myself.
I'm sorry. Stéphane, do you have any opinion about Iran and Russia meeting on the situation in Syria and Idlib in particular, and that they are also working towards resolution of that crisis? Does the Secretary General of the United Nations have any opinion on that?
I think as far there have been discussions going on in Geneva as part of the Constitutional Committee discussions, which Mr. de Mistura is hosting. I think it is important that all those who have influence on the parties, all the parties involved, and especially the guarantors in Astana, do whatever they can to avoid conflict. Thank you, Brendan.